Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I'm sure we'll probably get a few more people that are logging in to our meeting. So just to get things started off, I wanted to make sure that we go over a few things. I'm going to pull up the agenda. So let me share my screen with you. Here we go. So let me make sure that you can see this. We've got, so this morning, I'll go over a few things with you, and then we will have Hunter McLeod from, Hunter, did I say your name right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Hunter will be presenting some information to us on threat assessment and our role and how we can help in the process in our districts. And then Kathy, Sheila, and I will be unveiling our new Google Drive and the new website for you and giving you some tips and tricks on how to find it easily as you're navigating on the internet. And then we will have our health district update with Dr. Wallace, and then our state and regional nurse updates with Kathy. All right, so just a quick reminder to you that this meeting is recorded. So you'll want to make sure that you keep your microphones on mute. If you do have something that you'd like to ask, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity. So raise your hand, use your reactions or your emojis to raise your hand or let us know that you have a question, or we'll be monitoring the chat. So you're welcome to put a question in there. And as we are getting started, wanted to just have you use one of your emojis to let me know how your weekend was. Using an emoji to depict your weekend. Let me see how your weekend went. And then after you get that done, pull up the chat, please. And then let me know if you still have holiday decorations up. Are you one of those that leaves it up until the end of January or even February? What is the state of your holiday decorations? Oh no, Carrie, you have a sad face. I'm going to make a note to follow up and find out what happened over your weekend. All right. But turned off. Yep. All right, so Christmas decorations, it looks like there's a few still up. This is a good weekend to take the tree down, Michelle, absolutely. Nice. All right, fantastic. I've seen some houses where they leave the Christmas lights up all year. They just leave it off. I'm not one that can do that. I can't do that, but nice. No decorations up. Gotcha. Way to be on it, Brittany. Good work. All right. So go ahead and use the chat for any questions that you have, or any emojis to let us know that you have a question or comment. All right. So we are going to first be hearing from Hunter McLeod. She is the ESD's Threat Assessment Coordinator. She's a former police officer and a former teacher. And part of her role here at the ESD, she's a co-leader with ESD 123 on gang trainings and OSPI's gang task force. So without further ado, let's hear from Hunter.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Sheila, do I have share screen control capabilities? Yeah, okay. Let me make sure I can do this then. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I really suck at multitasking the chat and doing a Zoom. So you guys are going to have to tell me when something comes up because I am not good on the Zoom platform. Okay, can you guys see this okay? I'm gonna make it full screen, 1 sec.
Hunter, we got your back when it comes to the chat. We'll let you know what
Perfect.
comes
Okay.
up.
Not my forte on doing both. Okay, hang on here. Where's my little guy?
Hunter, make it into slideshow right there at the top.
There we go.
There you
Does that
go.
work? Perfect. Okay. All right. So just so you guys know, I think you're going to get all of these slides afterwards, but I put my email and my phone number in here. So if anything comes up or you have questions afterwards, I am a resource for all of you. I'm a resource for everyone in our districts. When it comes to anything regarding threat assessment or anything that is involving questions about student behavior or that's more concerning. So with that being said, just kind of, we're going to go over really briefly, what is threat assessment? Why does it matter? Why am I sharing this information with you guys? Because you guys are an important person to have on threat assessment teams, and how to help give you a voice with that, because some of our districts are still navigating the threat assessment process, and therefore they might miss steps. And the more we have the word out there of what it is and why we do it and who needs to be a part of it, the more decreased liability our districts and our buildings have, really is what it comes down to. In no way, shape, or form am I a legal attorney. And that's kind of my disclaimer for the whole rest of this little conversation. But it's just a good reminder, and I'll say it several times, that this has to do with a lot of times the liability side of it. I know you guys are more than familiar with different avenues regarding that. But really the big thing with threat assessment is it's preventative. I think a lot of times when we think of threat assessment, the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about it is something that's reactive. And it's because we're doing a threat assessment due to the fact that something happened. And that's not the purpose of it. Back in 2004, the Secret Service came out with the concept of threat assessment and the need to use it as a preventative system. The whole purpose of it isn't to predict future violence. Threat assessment is not a predictor, but it does help us better understand a student, where they're at, and help steer them off the pathway to violence. So with that being said, OSPI with House Bill 1216 back in the 2019-2020 school year recommended and mandated that districts adopt a form of threat assessment. So every district in the state of Washington needed to have and adopt a form of threat assessment. With that being said, they can't mandate which model to use. There are several models out there, but they do recommend the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model. And with that being said, all 9 ESD threat assessment coordinators all train on the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model. So the reason being, and I think you guys know this just from being in the schools, when we have, or I always use the terminology, right? If we're all teaching to the same standard, we might teach things a little differently, but that's the standard we're using. When we're all using a similar model, like the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model, it's really beneficial when we have students transferring districts, because we have a lot of students that, transfer from OMAC down to Tri-Cities or Spokane over to Moses Lake. And with that being said, when threat assessments are completed and they're using the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model, it makes for a lot easier of a transition for the incoming district to get the information that they need. Also, we as a state decided to go this way because it's also in response to zero tolerance policy. Schools were starting to see that when we suspended or expelled students, the likelihood of them developing a grievance that wasn't there before heightened. And therefore, we ended up putting our buildings and our districts at risk for potential grievances stacking up that maybe weren't there before. And in turn, as much as I think we would all like to hope that when a student's suspended or expelled, they're sitting at home with their parents, the likelihood of them having any form of constant supervision while they're spending time away from the building is very slim. So we found through lots of research, through lots of school shooting reports, the safest place for our kids to be is at school, because that's where they have the most eyes on them. And we are the most equipped within our buildings to put the most plans of intervention and supports in students' lives to help them with everything. So I always talk about threat assessment like it's a cog in the wheel to SEL, PBIS, IEP, BIT plan supports. Really, it's not anything that's a standalone, scary thing that we're starting to implement in our buildings. It's really a tool that slides in perfectly with everything we're already doing. And so with that, just kind of keeping in mind, then another reason why OSPI recommended the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model is it's one of 3 models that have been vetted by the Secret Service and Homeland Security. There's the Virginia model, which if you're familiar with the Virginia Tech shooting, it came about after that. The great thing about the Virginia model is it is focused on higher education. So for our colleges and universities, it's an excellent model to utilize. The Salem-Kaiser Cascade model is focused more for the K-12. It's meant to be user-friendly. It's meant to be early intervention, prevention model. It's the whole focus behind it is in regard to making sure that we are making connections with our kids. The nice thing too, and we have found this, and I'll kind of go into detail a little bit more, is it's that shared ownership, shared responsibility, decreased liability. It also includes a lot of equity language. It's constantly being updated by John Van Drill, who created it. And we're always seeing new forms come out that have, the new trauma-informed strategies, restorative practice, equity language additions, implicit bias and forms of bias checking that pop up on it, and the questions changed and everything's worded just so that way we're up to date with what the state's wanting to see. That's really nice because some of the models aren't as updated or as in tune with the different things that are happening. I know for a fact, just with my conversations with districts, we are seeing a lot more parents aware of what should and shouldn't be said, done. And so this model in particular really helps with that liability side of things. So what or when would I say something, I guess, in regards to concerning behavior? When you see something that's concerning in regards to something homicidal, or if you're pairing homicidality with suicidality. When we have suicidality solely, we're doing a suicide risk assessment, and that has its own pathway that we use. But anytime we have homicidality paired with suicidality, when we have threats that are made, and the full threat assessment training goes over the different types of threats that are made and everything, but really we're looking at, does the situation pose a threat? Not did the person make a threat? And that's really what threat assessment comes down to. We investigate all threats with threat assessment, whether they're vague or they're blunt and in your face. You guys in particular might experience the threatening behavior. You might experience the student that comes in that is on the receiving end of something. And therefore, you guys are one of the more vital roles and people to have on a team. I think more often than not, our districts don't push to have the and I don't mean this in an offensive way, but the non-mainstream administrator, counselor, psych, or SPED team member, because they can't risk losing you away from your room for any amount of time. And so just know that when and if you have the time to attend a full training for threat assessment, it will be in your best interest, because the information that you have will provide your schools with so much more information than what they have access to, and will be so much more beneficial in regards to the holistic whole view of our student. And that's really what threat assessment helps us do, is it helps us look at the whole student. But when I'm talking about posing a threat versus making a threat, a really great example that I always like to make is I grew up in Maui, Hawaii. I was one of 3 white kids at my school, and I got beat up regularly for being white. I was 5'3" in 7th grade, didn't really grow much after that. And so my peers who were significantly larger than me, my Tongan and Samoan peers, who were significantly larger, would beat me up after school or during school quite often. And with that being said, if you are walking down the hall you probably would have heard me say something to them, like, you do that again, I'm going to kill you. And therefore I'm making a threat, right? I'm making a threat, but I didn't pose a threat to them. I didn't carry the strength, the ability, the resources to be able to do anything. It was more of a last ditch effort to protect myself. And so in different times we'll make threats, right? Like it might be the really jokingly simple Christmas Eve, you're in the kitchen with your in-law, you look at your husband and you're like, if you leave me alone with her, I swear I'm gonna, like, right? But that's one of those just making a threat. Posing a threat is when you have the intention, the capability and capacity to carry through with what is actually being intended. And threat assessment helps us determine that. We may do threat assessments on a student who is exhibiting behavior that's reactive, but the threat assessment process, when done to fidelity, can also help us get a better understanding of the student's life outside of what we're seeing. And when we're talking about our IEP teams and our 504 teams and getting our BIT plans modified and changed, this can really help with any of those things. This can help with when we're dealing with a student that's exhibiting behaviors that might be on the receiving end of medication changes, anything along those lines. We might be seeing stuff like that, and the threat assessment process can help us determine that. It also may be something, though, that is more targeted, and it can help us determine that as well. So by having all of the team members trained, it helps us, one, decrease liability, and two, I always equate threat assessment as a giant puzzle, and everyone has a piece of the puzzle, but they don't quite know where their puzzle piece fits until we're doing the threat assessment process. And that's where you guys come in, because you guys can offer information where we are seeing, medication history that other stat team members aren't privy to. You guys may be able to speak to the student that comes in that has marks that might be showing signs of, some type of stalking behavior, or we have a lot of times sexual aggression can be on our threat assessments as well. And when we're aware of those things, we have to be on the forefront and be on that preventative mindset to make sure that we're doing our best to help inform our stat teams and be a part of that. So not only is it for when a student's exhibiting the concerning behaviors, but when we know we have a victim, we also need to be investigating and doing a threat assessment. And sometimes that's how we figure out where we're sitting when we're doing a threat assessment. I will say that sometimes we have middle school fights that break out, and we might get student A that is claiming student B started the fight or whatnot. But needless to say, anytime we have concerning behaviors that we're aware of, that we see, that we know of, so-and-so stabbed me with a pencil, so-and-so did this, or whatever reasons, we need to be aware and starting those conversations for, hey, is this something where we should be doing a threat assessment? And when you sit through the whole training, there's a whole process of sitting through, like, okay, this is the type of behavior we should streamline into a threat assessment and whatnot. But for the intro version of this training or this conversation today, just knowing that there's a starting spot of when we see this behavior, it's a good time to have that conversation. Why might I be asked to sit on a team or fill out a form? So I know for a fact I have a couple districts that have really utilized their key players. They have their transportation department heads trained. They have all of their school resource officers, school security trained. I know that I have one district in particular that has a school nurse trained. So it's just making sure that we have all of these people on board and ready to sit on a threat assessment team, to fill out the important paperwork, because when it comes down to it, if we're doing these to fidelity, we're not only protecting ourselves, which that's not what threat assessment's for, but in this day and age, it becomes a hot topic, that decreased liability, but also helping the team benefit from the information that you have, that other team members have, that allow us to better understand what we're seeing with the behavior that's coming up. Again, threat assessment's meant to be preventative. It's not punitive. In the state law, RCW 28A 32123, there is a very firm statement in there that says that threat assessment cannot be the reason for suspension or expulsion. And that's to keep it from being prevented or from being punitive. It's meant to keep it preventative. And it's all about making those connections and inclusivity and making sure that when we have a student who we may determine has no connections with anyone in the building anymore because they've burnt bridges with everyone, finding that person, that adult that could be that connection or that person for them in the moment is huge. I've now mentioned liability several times. The important part of why I mention this so much is because of all of the research and findings that I have done and been a part of in regards to certain unfortunate events that have happened in our nation. Taft Union High School is a great example of the disadvantages of not having threat assessment or not doing it to fidelity. What happened at Taft Union High School is a student came to school, shot another student in the stomach, and of course, the parents' family came back, sued the district. District, paid their lump sum for what was neglectful and whatnot, but then they came back and the lawyer found certain individuals liable because of the information that they had and went back and sued them individually. So that's that center picture on the slide right there. Is you had the verdict of the assistant principal. They found 27% responsible. The school psych 19, principal 4, interim principal 3, and the security specialist 1% responsible. And then, of course, sued them for the set amount that the lawyer decided due to the information that they had that they didn't share, and the fact that either they weren't fully trained in threat assessment or they weren't operating things to fidelity. And it needless to say, when we start seeing those things come up in the legal system, the likelihood of them happening more and more, whether a case is won or not, is greater. The other ones that came to light with liability, Arapahoe High School and the Oxford High School shooting reports. Oxford recently was released in November. Really fascinating study research that was conducted. And it's about 600 pages. It's not light reading. If you want to read it later, I can send you a link. Feel free to email me. But I've spent the last month really dissecting it and kind of figuring out how we can use this information to move forward. And the biggest takeaway is there were people that had information. There were people that didn't know their puzzle piece was important, or didn't ask the right questions, or didn't share the right information to the right people. And the attack at Oxford potentially could have been averted if those people had the proper training and knowledge of what happened. That's the same with Arapahoe High School. Arapahoe High School actually really led us into understanding the HIPAA and FERPA exceptions that allow us to have conversations regarding threat assessment. There are clauses in HIPAA and FERPA that allow conversations to occur in relation to a health or safety emergency. And this is where threat assessment falls in. When you have a building that is conducting a threat assessment, it's in relation to a health or safety emergency. The threat assessment document itself, the best way to think about it is it's a document for your building. At the end of the day, it's a protection document for your building that helps determine how to best support a student that may be exhibiting concerning behaviors to keep or prevent or help assist with different strategies and resources a student off the pathway to violence. And so really just making sure that everyone has the up-to-date training needed is really huge and vital for that purpose. And again, I've mentioned it a couple times, right? Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. It's a tool. It's huge and it's vital. I can't tell you how many times a threat assessment has been happening, manifestations also occurring, and we have law enforcement investigating the situation. And this is happening all at the same time. And the threat assessment's, is supposed to be completed in X amount of time, and it may be completed before a manifestation meeting. And we'll find out through all of this that, the student really is exhibiting the concerning behaviors because of potentially their disability, but also medication that they've just been taken off of, or medication they're put on that the school wasn't aware of until the threat assessment was completed, or, all of these sorts of things. And really it can just help create that everyone's in the same boat, everyone's understanding what we're seeing, and everyone's able to find ways to support our student and keep them safe while keeping the rest of the community safe and the schools and our staff safe as well. Any questions so far?
Hunter,
Hunter, there's
it's Liz. Let me turn my camera back on. So I've asked this question to different people. That form that's circulating around for the threat assessments for the team, that's not nurse specific. And nobody seems to have a form that is specific for us.
There
And
isn't one specific for nurses. That's
Okay,
why
so
having you guys.
I started creating my own. Right,
Okay.
wrong, or indifferent. It gives me a way to document
Okay, I
those
would be
different
careful
areas.
with that if it's for threat assessment. I would double check with your district on if it falls under what model they're using, because then when we're kind of going off key, depending on what model it is, when we're going off trail with that, we can put ourselves again at a liability standpoint because we're not following the protocol to fidelity or whatnot. The teacher one isn't specific for nurses, isn't specific for transportation, isn't specific for a bunch of different people. The key and the hope is that our districts are including those individuals on our teams themselves. And that's kind of where that can come into play, is having those key players sitting there when needed or sharing the information when needed to someone if they're not able to make it. So that way the team has that information on hand.
So what triggers nursing that sits on a team when they're not used to sitting on a team? I've sat on them. To ask those questions and bring those kind of things up, because I mean, not everybody on this call is going to know, okay, I need to ask, hey, has there been medication changes? Or I need to ask, have we been in to see the doctor recently? Or I need to ask, are we seeking mental health interventions somewhere?
Yep.
But if you're not prompted to ask those questions or bring that information to the team, you don't have fidelity in the meeting. So you're not looking at the whole picture.
So when we're doing the threat assessment process and having all the key players there, so in regards to mental health, you've got your school counselors and school psychs, you've got those people that can speak to their specific fields. That's the hope with threat assessment, is that you're having all of that. And when we're missing those key pieces, that's a good reminder that we're having up-to-date training. I know I have some districts that did a training 3 years ago, and I haven't seen or talked to them since. And things change rapidly throughout the years just because of events that occur across our nation, and things make different conversations come up that create more valuable conversations within our teams themselves. And so with that, I've also started to include a lot more conversations in regards to newsletters for people to be aware of and information to push out for questions that people should be asking. So all of those sorts of things I try to push out, also with new up-to-date trainings to learning labs. But really it's a constantly evolving process, and it's fluid. And unfortunately, and I had this conversation when I did the school psych meeting last month with all the schools, regional school psychs, is some of our districts aren't utilizing threat assessment to fidelity. And the unfortunate reality is it takes the conversation of you guys, of those that are aware of it, especially those that are in the know of information that needs to be shared, to say, hey, we have, there's a state law that requires us to be doing threat assessment, and we need to be doing it. How is our model? What does our model look like? And, you know, do you want me trained? Do you want me on your team? And it requires those conversations to happen, which is, I think, why I'm here, to have that conversation with you guys. But I'm always here. I can't tell you, I think I get probably, I don't know, 20, 30 calls a day, emails a day about just different questions that come up. And that's my role. That's my job, is to help assist with, like, hey, is this something that I should mention to our team? Is this something that I should push for a threat assessment? And that's the goal, is to get people comfortable with the information they have, to feel like they can say something, in hopes of getting that started. Yeah.
Hunter, would this be something that the nurses need to talk to their administrators and start, I don't want to say pushing to be on that threat assessment team, but initiating the conversation with them, or is that part of your training, talking to them to include us?
Yes, so I do talk to everyone about everyone that should be included. Whether or not that happens, like I mentioned at the beginning of the training, is out of my control in regards to making sure that certain people get to meetings. I know some of my districts did an August Institute where they were just hoping those that haven't been trained could make it to my section, but you know, I'm always offering them, and when people are able to get away and come to one, it's highly recommended from a liability perspective, just to have that knowledge if you're ever asked to sit on a team or give information for one. But yeah, I highly encouraged having that conversation, because nurses in particular have information that, you know, not everyone else is privy to, and you might see things that not everyone else is privy to that's vital for the teams. Yeah.
So we have a question in the chat from Erica. She's asking if any of the nurses in their districts are on the assessment team. Liz mentioned that she is on the team at one of her buildings, but only after having asked or talked to the administrator about it. So quick question out to the nurses. If you are on an assessment team or have sat on one of these assessment teams, if you wouldn't mind putting something in the chat, that would be good information for us. And then also something that you can lean on each other on too. It'd be good for us to know. Okay, so and as they are working on that, Hunter, I had a question. When it comes to seeing those red flag behaviors or hearing that kind of language, I know when we talk to kids about potential CPS involvement type situations, we have to be really careful with how we ask those questions, right? So what are some of the questions we can ask? How do we kind of navigate that conversation in the beginning when we have a situation presented to us?
So that's one of the ways that threat assessment differs from a lot of other things, because it's in relation to the building. It's the same thing with like a law enforcement investigation, or when we are referring something to CPS. What we discover in the threat assessment is separate from what the investigation's done with when we talk to DCYF or when we talk to our law enforcement partners and we're finding something out that is criminal or something along those lines. The threat assessment process itself has information in it that is more on the lines of, you know, this is in particular, and it's hard to talk about out of context of the training, and I apologize for that, because you're going to leave here and you're gonna be like, well, that doesn't make sense. And so I apologize. But really I'll just leave it at that, in the sense that the way that we conduct threat assessment can lend itself to DCYF referrals, law enforcement, but what notes are conducted or what documentation comes from the threat assessment process itself doesn't leave the threat assessment file. What you know, or what is shared with those people, is something separate from what's conducted in the threat assessment file. And that just probably muddied everyone's minds in what I'm doing, but I promise you that it's a little bit clearer in a more, in a longer training. But just to answer your question too, though, kind of brings into like this next slide that I have in regards to the pathway to violence. And this is what we see. This is that overarching targeted violence pathway. Because again, I mentioned we're going to be doing threats on reactive violence. Little Hunter McLeod in high school who was making threats, that was purely reactive violence. But if a threat assessment had been conducted, you know, and if I would have had someone ask me when I went to the nurse's office how I got this cut or whatever, you know, you might have been like, huh, okay. Or if you walked past me and heard me make a threat, you'd be like, ooh, that Hunter sounds really dangerous. We should be doing a threat assessment. And then you'd come to find out I'm actually the victim of this threat. And it would then push for a whole other investigation towards these other students that are posing that targeted violence potentially, or posing that more of a threat. But when we're talking about the pathway to violence and we're talking about this concerning behavior that's targeted, these are things that we, the Secret Service, Homeland Security, have spent years and years and years researching, and have seen this consistent profile, if you will, this part of it being that profile, because there's no consistent physical profile of a school shooter. There's no consistent way to say, oh, that kid wearing a trench coat is the next school shooter. We can't use that verbiage because none of that's true. But what we can see is this pathway to violence. And so really what happens is we have a grievance, and everyone experiences grievances. It's that initial cause of distress. It's that, like, I got in a fight with so-and-so and now I'm frustrated and I'm upset. Then it bounces into violent ideation. And that's that belief that violence is a means to address the grievance. A large population of people experience violent ideation. The likelihood of us being able to see or intervene with violent ideation is smaller, but may still come to light. And so the hope is that we in the buildings, when we see things, hear things, witness things, we're able to kind of jump in there with in between violent ideation and research and planning. Because then you have the next step would be research and planning. That's surveillance, that's looking things up online, testing security and methods, asking questions about, oh, hey, does this door lock when we have a fire drill? Those sorts of things that are a little bit more like, I wonder where that's coming from. And then it progresses into preparation, acquiring weapons, acquiring equipment, making sure that transportation is covered, having dates planned, rehearsing. And this can be, you know, something like, I know my dad keeps his gun in the underwear drawer, so I'm going to take it out at night and see if he notices, and then I'll put it back in the morning, right? It's just knowing that that's there. The breach novel aggressions, when we circumvent the security measures, it might be breaking a lock on a window to know I can get back in here, stealing a key card from a staff member so I can get back in here. It can be taking that gun from dad's underwear drawer and putting it in my backpack and bringing it to school and seeing if anyone notices me at school with this. Maybe not ever taking it out. And then it progresses into that attempt to carry out that violence against the target. And so really it's this clear, discernible process of thinking when we look at events that have happened in our history of school violence, large mass school violence attacks. You can unfortunately look back and say, oh, that there is a clear, discernible process of thinking, and that's kind of where this falls into play. The unfortunate reality is this is not a set time frame that it occurs. And so, you know, someone might sit in the grievance, violent ideation, research planning stage for a really long time, and then something happens and it pushes them through to the attack a lot quicker than someone else who may, you know, sit in different phases at different times. But needless to say, this is something that is important for everyone to kind of just be aware of this pathway and understanding of it. So when it's referenced, you can kind of know what people are talking about. So that way you can kind of see where students might be at in regards to that. And that's the end of kind of my slide. So I'm more than happy to answer any more questions, but I did include on here, and you guys will get this, I think, too, but there's the QR code for my safety, my threat assessment safety newsletter. You can get access to all of the ones I've done in the past. You can come to any of the trainings, one, and if you have time, because I know you guys have so much time on your hands to leave your buildings. But just know that there's many opportunities to get information, whether it's via newsletter, via training, however, and hopefully use that sort of stuff to help conversations in your buildings too. But otherwise, I'm free to answer questions as needed. And go from there.
There's another question in the chat from Kathy Hunt. Is the threat assessment only for students? What if a staff member is feeling threatened by a student and or parent?
So it's not for parents, but we do threat assessments when staff members have been threatened by students. So it's not just student to student. Anytime we have a staff member, admin, anyone that has been threatened, and this can be hard because I think, as you guys all know, we rationalize things differently and we take things differently. When we have been personally threatened, we are the victim in that situation. And so making sure that we're taking that into account and Now, and again, that goes into the posing versus making, right? If we have a student whose manifestation of their disability is that they make loud bravado threats, that's going to be a little bit different. And that's why that whole threat assessment team comes into play, and why it's so key to have everyone there to be able to speak to their professional lens to know why the student's doing or saying what they're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question from Pam Kleberinga. Could you talk a bit more about the HIPAA for ability to release information about a student to a team without breaking those confidentiality rules?
Yeah, so you aren't breaking the confidentiality rules because it falls under threat assessment, falls under the concern for health and safety emergencies in regards to students, both under FERPA and HIPAA. And that's where that conversation happens. There is, and you'll notice like on these trainings, right, it says level 1 threat assessment training. Level 1 threat assessment trainings happen within our buildings. I then, when buildings, and it's not an escalation of behavior, but more of a need for further resources, when a district needs further resources than what their buildings can provide, I can help assist with level 2s. And that's where I have community partners that are trained out in the community, local law enforcement, sheriff's department, behavioral health, mental health. I have all of these outside resources to help provide schools with further resources that may assist DCYF. All these people sit on the teams, and due to the fact that threat assessment is in response to a health or safety emergency, and we're not just doing them on, surface level threats per se, and we're not just doing them, but we're talking about information that pertains to the situation at bay that we're dealing with. It allows for those conversations to happen, and it's really cool. I just did a couple level 2s for a district last week, and the conversations that were happening between local law enforcement, DCYF, and one of our mental health supporters with what they knew about the student to share to the team, that then I was able to type up and offer ideas of support and resources for our district, was amazing. And it was so helpful for this district to understand and know more about their kiddo that they weren't privy to before. So with those, and hopefully that bigger picture of a level 2 kind of helps explain how that falls into our smaller level 1. But yeah, that's where that clause comes in.
So Hunter, I just have a quick question, and it's really it's getting back to a little bit about what Liz was describing, and that is without actually changing, certainly the structure or the intent of the program, it would really be helpful to have tools available for school nurses as they, we have people ranging from they've been in their job for a month to, people who've been in their job for several years. And so to bring that level of expertise to the less experienced school nurses, as far as, the kinds of information that would be helpful to a team like this. So not changing the structure as much as providing tools for people to be able to just look at and say, okay, these are the kind of things that it would be helpful to bring to the table.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kathy. Keep going.
So, and we can provide those to people, because getting to the trainings is, as you say, quite challenging. And so without actually being able to attend, we could provide additional resources that would help direct people to better be able to participate and feel more comfortable.
For sure. And I will say that was the hope with the newsletters that I put out, and hopefully people can start to see. I mean, like I did a whole newsletter on just because that was something that came up with the SPED group, was what is my purpose here? I can't get my mind out of the SPED realm to sit on a threat assessment team. And, school counselors and psychs couldn't get a voice on their threat assessment teams. They weren't able to go get trained. And so I did a newsletter on the importance of that. And so I do try really hard to push those out in the newsletters. So that can be a good way to get that information out to people, but also, creating some documents is definitely something that I can do on top of the newsletters. I would start the newsletters, and then if able to get to a training, I cover a lot of the questions that need to be asked and how those look and the process for it at the trainings. But yeah, I mean, whatever best suits people, I'm always happy to answer things via email and phone call too.
Mm-hmm. That would be great. And I'm sure some of the school nurses would have some input into that kind of a document, as far as, well, here are the kind of things we would ask or we would look for in this situation, so that it's kind of very well-rounded.
Yeah.
One more quick question from Liz is about all these trainings. Are they all in person, or is there an option for remote for any of
They're
them?
all in person. I no longer do any Zoom trainings because there was the information is too intense and too, I don't want to say graphic because it's not graphic, but it's a heavy topic to do over Zoom. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, maybe we can work together to make an option for our nurses so that they can attend something. So,
And a lot of our districts have done in-district trainings. So that's the unfortunate part, is your district may have done an in-district training or it has one planned. And asking when they're doing one might be key to getting invited to it or getting there. Because I mean, I'd say probably twice a month, I'm going out to districts doing in-district trainings. So that's another thing. I mean, I go out to quite a few of our districts and do them too.
Hunter, could we get a list in advance so we know which districts are on the training schedule?
I can email you, Kathy, when I have districts that have got one on the book.
And ones that also are done. It'd be nice to know which districts already have implemented this, program and have a strong program set up so we can connect a school nurse with whoever that contact person is at the district.
I will send you an email today for that. The unfortunate part too is with all the turnover that's happened in the last 2 years, there's been some things that have, holes that have occurred that people are missing. So I will definitely include it. And then all I'm trying to say is those who are in charge may not be up to date trained, but there are people in these districts that are trained. So yeah.
Okay.
all right. Are there any other questions? I see Liz has another option or another comment for those of us that are out of town. We have no option to attend. So hopefully we can get something set up in the future so that we can make that possible for people to attend.
Yeah. And I would advocate
those
for your
in-person
district
trainings.
to get one at your district or your building too.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Hunter, for your time with us today. Conversations like this always generate more questions and more thought-provoking ideas and whatnot. So we will want to stay in touch with you about trainings in the future and what we can do to be part of the student assessment or student threat assessment to make it more a better experience for everybody that's on that board too.
For sure.
So we will, if you have any other questions for Hunter, if you think of something later, put it in the chat and we'll make sure you get in contact with her so you can get your questions answered. So we're going to move right along with our new School Nurse Corps website and the Google Drive update. I'll be watching to make sure when Dr. Wallace comes on that we can introduce him as well. So without further ado, let's take a look at that new website. So Kathy and Sheila, we're getting it pulled up here for you. Great, thank you. All right.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start here. There's a couple of things we wanted to cover briefly with you this morning. One is that we've done a lot of revisions to the school nurse website, and the other is relocation of the Google files. So Sheila, if you want to move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so revisions to the School Nurse Corps website. We have done quite a bit of updates to the content on there. And the other thing that has happened is that we've moved the Google Drive. So before we move slides, I just want to share that everyone is going to be receiving an email today with a link to the current Google Drive folder. Some of you probably in the past may have starred or bookmarked the old existing school nurse Google folder, and that whole folder, all of those files that are within it have needed to transition over to a different area of the drive. Now, that process has been completed, but here's the thing about that. It does change. It then changes the address to the folder. So you still have access to the folder. Your email has been loaded into the system so that we know that you can connect with it. And Sheila has done a lot of work creating directions for those of you who may have bookmarked your old site, how to delete that bookmark if you need help with that. So how to unstar or how to eliminate that bookmark, and then how to create the new bookmark for the new address. So thank you to the school nurses who went through and tested Sheila's directions. It sounds like it all went well. And so Sheila can scoot through the next slide and just show you an example of what you're going to get. So you're going to get this PowerPoint is going to be coming to you as a link, and you're going to see, go ahead and scooch through to the next slide, and then you're going to start a process here. So this is going to take you through how to unbookmark your page and edit that so that you can bookmark the new address. And so when you get an email from the system today telling you that something has changed there, I just wanted to make sure you knew what that was about and it didn't surprise you. So we'll get this information to you in a couple of different ways. But Sheila, if you want to stop sharing this particular screen and pull the web page up and share that view.
Kathy, we have a quick question while Sheila's pulling up her other screen. Melanie Wallace asked if we could put the link in the chat for her slides as well.
Yes, you certainly can put the link to the slides in the chat. That would be great. Thank you.
I haven't moved them into the all school nurses yet though. So
Yes.
yeah, we will get you an email that'll have all that if you would like to wait until we get done with this meeting.
Yeah, you can't, that's the problem, Melanie, is you can't click into it right now. But we'll get you that link so that you can after the meeting's done, and Sheila kind of like pulling a switch here.
Okay. Can you all see that?
There you go. Okay, so the School Nurse Corps webpage has had some updates to it, so I just wanted to give you a quick view. The directory has been, do you want to click into the directory? All right, so now you can see a list again, all the school nurses are up to date. So we've got everybody's contact and schools listed here for you if you want to contact other school nurses. You've also got a list in there of all the best school nurse mentors and all the School Nurse Corps administrators. So very good. Okay, the calendar page has been updated. So when you click on that, just a reminder, you can see the calendar that will have a list to all of our courses. For those of you who are new, if you haven't created your login yet in PD Enroller, there's a link there for how to get that done. And then a link to the continue to the professional development listings page. All right, so professional development page. This is again the page that contains a lot of professional development opportunities that are not necessarily scheduled.
Oops, sorry.
These aren't necessarily scheduled somewhere, and so
I side clicked my mouse. Sorry, let me get back in there. That little button gets me. Okay, professional development. Here we go.
yeah, there we go. Okay, so what you'll find in here are things that aren't necessarily going to be on the calendar because they're recorded webinars. So you can scoot down the page here and you can see examples of what's coming up. Here are the current ESA prep course listings, meetings that are coming up that we're aware of, recorded sessions of interest. So those things are not necessarily good, especially the recordings aren't going to show up on your calendar view because they're going to be available to you any day or time.
And you are able to print that. And these links work better up here in the live events if you bring it up this way. So here we are.
Okay. The online guides, I just want to remind people that the online guides are an excellent resource for you. We have two of these that are electronic. One is the resource guide that covers, everything from medication administration to immunizations to health screenings. It's all divided up by different chapters and has just a number of links and resources available to you. And you can click into that electronically. And that's followed by the Student Health Services Guidebook. And that's an excellent book for your health room assistants, for administrators who aren't familiar perhaps with how to manage a school health room. That is a guide that is useful for anybody who needs to understand or be oriented to health room practices. So those manuals are both available electronically. And if you're not familiar with the Student Health Services Guidebook, that has just recently been revised and the format has been totally redone. If you click into it now, you'll come to a good table of contents.
It's a slow one. Maybe we don't have time to go there. Oh, there it is.
Okay. So
That's what it looks like.
this is, if you've been in this before, you'll definitely see the difference in how this electronic manual is built. And if you scoot down a little further, you'll be able to come to the table of contents in here and then be able to click into different aspects of this book. Okay, so let's go back to resources. The resources page has been updated. We've taken off many of the state links to your OSPI manuals, your Department of Health manuals, because those things are all housed now in the Google folders. So in your Access All School Nurses folder, after the meeting today, when you click on that link, this is going to take you to the new site. After Sheila makes that transition today, and you'll be able to click into a number of folders to find all of that information. You also have links to public health resources. And just as a reminder, we have the whole public health resources webpage, and that has a lot of links to you on issues relating to public health, not exclusively COVID as they have been in the past, but to just about any aspect of our relationship with public health and the different activities that are going on there. Links to how to subscribe to newsletters, how to do your lending library page. So these are just a lot of resources for you to be able to hook into. Okay. And the orientation, we're updating our orientation page content. Again, wanting to get you into the Google folder to make sure that you have access to our tools and resources that can help you get started with some of these systems.
And this is the section, Kathy, that's going to get updated right down here at the bottom with the
Correct.
slides that I'm going to send out later.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Mentoring. All right, so for those of you in the Best School Nurse Mentor program or who are interested in information about mentoring, there's some links here. These are taking you into the Google folder where you're going to find all the files that contain all the Best Mentor content. The competence page, this is where we define the different certifications for school nurses that are available either through Washington State or the National Certification Program, and some information on recommendations, including development of a professional portfolio as part of that ongoing documentation of school nursing competence and evaluation. Okay, so these are the kind of things we get the most questions about from school nurses, and we're definitely working on our pages all the time to keep expanding the content. We are trying to put as much as possible now into the Google Drive. It's very easy for us to update as things change or we get either new tools or revisions to tools. We're able to go in and quickly put the current materials in there.
The
do.
website doesn't look drastically different from before, but we have, as Kathy and Sheila have pointed out, we have done some updating of and refreshing of the content, and so thank you for the tour of our new things.
Okay.
So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. We'd be happy to help you and walk you through getting used to the changes. So I did want to let you know that Dr. Wallace is on, and so we can move into the update portion, or our public health update portion of our meeting. So if you have any questions about the changes to the website or to the Google Drive, please just let us know. All right, thank you, Dr. Wallace. Welcome to our cold January meeting today. We're glad to have you, and we're ready to hear your updates.
Yeah, thanks. I got called into the hospital, so I'm chilly myself. Just walked in, and don't have a PowerPoint to share, but wanted to just kind of give you guys updates on what we're working on in the public health world. Respiratory illness is still occupying a lot of time or a lot of focus. Still in the middle of that season, but both in state, local, emergency room visit data, at least, we see that RSV and influenza are trending down. COVID at the state level is flat, and it's actually trending down in emergency room visits in North Central Washington, along with RSV and influenza. But then in discussion with healthcare partners, we're still seeing COVID being reported in hospitalizations, several long-term care facilities still seeing outbreaks in their facilities, especially among staff members. And then wastewater, interestingly, is showing COVID increasing in those sites where we're collecting data in Brewster and Wenatchee. So it's still around, but it's reassuring to see emergency room visits decreasing and not as high as they were several weeks ago for RSV and influenza. I do think we're still seeing tons of respiratory illness. You guys can confirm that, because oftentimes you're on the front lines and are experiencing absenteeism, but for the most part, it's non-COVID, non-RSV, non-influenza, and it's showing up as kind of upper respiratory infections that are testing negative for those specific diseases. We are tracking a couple of other things that I wanted to just bring to your attention quickly. Access to healthcare is kind of an ongoing project on our end. We have just hired a new behavioral health or mental health and substance abuse coordinator at Chelan Douglas Health District. So they're going to be reaching out and hopefully connecting with ESD, working with the behavioral health access task force, and helping us to identify gaps and figure out where we can help with resources. I know one of those places is in psychiatric prescribers, providers with the ability to prescribe medications, and there are a couple of healthcare organizations that are looking at kind of a regional response for that. Still working with our critical access hospitals and Central Washington Hospital on access, especially the higher levels of care, ICU level care, or specialty care for hospitalized patients. And it's certainly a challenge for our critical access hospitals that don't have as many specialists. And then realizing it's a big challenge for our EMS teams as well, because the less access we have, the farther they have to transport patients. And so it really takes a lot of their teams and trucks offline, and is especially hard in the winter seasons when passes are bad as well. And then looking at primary care access too. We've got great primary care organizations and providers across the region. But looking at that access to early treatment for illnesses, and prevention of illnesses, especially communicable diseases, and I'd say especially vaccine preventable illnesses in kids and in adults. But we're still working through a backlog, I think, in primary care of kids and even adults that that fell behind on immunizations during COVID. And certainly when we see reports locally or at a state level of vaccine preventable illnesses, it really makes us worried that more kids are vulnerable than really need to be. There's been a measles outbreak in Clark County, I think 4 to 7 cases, most of which were isolated during their contagious period. It doesn't sound like there are more cases related to that. But really that got picked up by really good healthcare providers, really good folks on the front lines communicating with public health and stopping the spread. And so I've sent out an advisory to our healthcare providers. I think schools may have received a letter too, I think with a little bit of information about measles, but really trying to drive home the point that when it comes to vaccine preventable illnesses, we haven't seen them very frequently because they have not been as big of a part of our medical experience, but they could come back, and we need to know what measles looks like. We need to know what pertussis and other illnesses look like, and so certainly want strong coordination and collaboration between primary care and public health. And I would say with schools as well, when kids are presenting, because they will probably, it could very well show up in the school nurse's office first. And so we want to be able to identify those and detect those. We are going to be starting a notifiable conditions kind of mini lecture series through Chelan Douglas, probably quarterly. The first one is going to be on February 8th. And Linnea, I can send information to you on that, but it'll be a quarterly presentation from me and other experts locally and from the Department of Health, just talking about our notifiable conditions. If there's reason to address anyone in particular, at that point in time, we will, but trying to educate frontline folks, healthcare providers, and anybody that might be the first one to see a notifiable condition on what it looks like and why it's important to respond quickly and coordinate efforts with public health. On February 8th, we'll be focusing on syphilis because that has been on the rise recently, and I have a lot of really good collaboration already set up between primary care and public health and with Department of Health at the state level as well. So I think it provides a really good example of opportunities for coordination. Other things at Chelan Douglas on our website, there's an after action report that's been published now, kind of the post-COVID look back, what takeaways can we draw from the pandemic, and how does that impact preparedness and strategic planning in the future? Feel free to take a look at that. Some of you may have been interviewed by the team that was doing it, but I think our Board of Health especially put a lot of time and effort into that. And so I think it'll provide some good opportunities for growth. We're tracking a salmonella outbreak with Department of Health. There are 4 cases in Washington State, 1 in King, 1 in Spokane, 1 in Chelan, and 1 Douglas. We haven't been able to tie it specifically to any one product. There's a statewide alert for charcuterie meat, but thus far we can't identify that any of the cases in Washington are linked to that national recall. But we're working with Department of Agriculture as well as Department of Health and other local healthcare staff. Sorry about that. To jump on top of that and advise the public if there is something specific to avoid or not consume. And then just to follow up on the vision access that we've been discussing over the past couple months, we have a Wenatchee Valley College nursing student who's going to work with Kristen Hosey on identifying gaps. She may have already reached out to you guys, but the idea there is to identify gaps and then to work on resources to fill those and take a regional approach. So those are updates. If anyone wants to share their experience with non-COVID, non-RSV, non-influenza related respiratory illnesses, and if you are also seeing plenty of it, and if you have any questions about that, please let me know. And if not, I'm gonna sign off, or I can follow up.
So in the chat, we have a quick mention from Michelle Rogie over in Manson. She listed lots of URIs and lots of URIs and all have tested negative for flu, COVID, and RSV.
Thanks, Michelle.
So-
Yeah, that confirms what we're seeing all over the place. I know in healthcare too, we've got a lot of absenteeism in our workforce.
All right, so if there aren't any other questions, well, please feel free to unmute yourself if you do have a question for Dr. Wallace, or put it in the chat. If you do end up having a question later, please let us know and we can get you connected with an answer, connect you with Dr. Wallace for that answer as well. Pam Cleveringa from Ephrata said, "Thank you for your time, Dr. Wallace. It's always good to hear updates from you."
Thanks, Pam. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. Really, thanks so much for the work that you do. And please reach out to your local health jurisdiction or us at CDHD with any questions or anything we can do.
Well, thank you for your time. We always appreciate you joining us.
Okay. Take care and stay warm.
Thank you. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye-bye. Okay. So it sounds like there might be some great information coming out from this, our health sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, from our health districts coming out to us pretty soon. And when I hear more or learn more about the presentation that will be happening on February 8th, I'll let you know as well. So,
So Lena, I would just like to add to that, the student who is going to be working with Kristen. So that's one of the RN to BSN students, and this is a project that that was assigned to them that they wanted to pick up on, helping put together a 4-county kind of description, or 4-county opportunities for vision supports. And so I don't have the last name of the student yet. They connected with me last week, and this student is going to be working specifically with Kristen out of the health district. And you may be asked to participate in a survey. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that if you do get a link from a student who says that they are working on this vision program, we really appreciate you taking the time to click the link and answer their questions, because this is part of their final project for their BSN program. So those of you who've been involved in this program through Wenatchee Valley College and WSU are familiar with this process in their program. And they're really going to appreciate having your input on any needs that you have or resources that you've identified. So thank you for helping them.
fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you for that additional info, Kathy. And if there aren't any other questions, well, let's move into our state and regional school nurse updates. Again, if you have any questions for Dr. Wallace or need any more information, please connect with us and we can work on helping you get those answers. All right. Thank you,
Okay.
Kathy. Go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. But see, I can't see it, Sheila.
Did
So
you
I'm
want me
gonna,
to share it?
yes, I'm gonna stop
Okay.
sharing. If you want to pull it up, so I can't see it.
You should be able to see it now. Nope, clicked ahead. There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so let's go through some state and regional updates that are going to impact you. Let's go ahead and move on to the next screen. First, I just want to point out and again to thank all of you for all your very hard work. Last week or so, Superintendent Reichdahl put out an update about, kind of the year-end report on Washington State school achievements. So just a couple of things to put, to point out. Well, while we're certainly in the state not perfect, our education system is not perfect. And we know there's always lots of areas that we could focus on and improve. There were some things that I think it's important that I pulled out of his updates because you guys are really providing supports that make all of these things possible. The first one is the graduation rate increased, which is a very positive thing. The other thing is, and I don't know how many of you have looked into your imagination library, but during 2023, we expanded that program out to include every area of the state. And that's the book, or that's the program that provides free books every month to kids under the age of 5. So it really is something geared for your transitional kindergarten kids, for example. So those very young kids, this is a way to get books for them, and you have a contact within your counties who can get parents signed up for that. So that's a great thing that Washington finally moved on board with that program. We did expand transitional kindergarten this year, so that was good. That's a good work. And then we had more graduates in our state who had the seal of biliteracy than any other state. So those are all really positive things. And if the students were not healthy and you guys were not helping them, they never would have been able to achieve all of these different things. So this is just a way to thank you and to make sure that you're aware that every year Superintendent Reichdahl puts out kind of a State of the Union summary of the year, and these are just some of the things that I pulled out from that this year's report. So next slide, please. Another thing that I wanted to pull out from the report was this is really to address some of the behavioral health work that OSPI has been involved in over the last year. And I would really encourage you to see who at your district, and as could be your counselors, will probably be the main folks, but to make sure that you have this strong connection between mental health supports, behavioral health supports, and physical supports. We really are trying to address whole child issues with kids. And sometimes it feels like mental and behavioral health efforts kind of get separated somehow from the physical, and really these things all really could be incorporated, and we will get farther if we all work together in supporting the health of the students. So this is really on here more as a reminder of anything else, is that there has been a lot of work that has been done through the schools in the past year to augment their mental and behavioral support systems. And I just want to make sure that the folks who are at the helm of that in your school districts are connecting with you. Next slide, please. So some legislative updates. So, we're in that time period right now where we've got a lot of laws that are in the works. I think we're like 590 plus potential laws that could come down. So it's a lot of work that's being done. Even though it's a short session this year, there are some things I just wanted to point out that really are going to have some impact on school-based health. One of them is the new HB 1608. So that's a House bill that is looking at the development of standing orders for epinephrine in schools. So this is a law that would, for those of you who have struggled in the past trying to find standing orders so that you could have or receive some par stock or assigned epinephrine.
That little one? I don't know. I'm sorry.
So that you could receive some epinephrine for your school districts. This is the law that would help you with that, so that in a similar way to having a naloxone statewide order, there would be a statewide order for epinephrine that you could then use for that. I want to particularly thank Taylor and Liz. Taylor and Liz both testified on behalf of this House bill. And I would encourage you, if you've never seen this in process before, to actually click on the recording link here. So the recording will take you to the House Education public hearing. And this one covered multiple topics, but these two in particular had to do with school-based health services, and I thought would be the most interest to you. You've got the minutes down here, so if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, it's probably about an hour and a half, but you can click specifically to the public testimony around epinephrine at about the 3-minute mark. And it's quite interesting because you're going to be able to hear from, you can hear from parents, you can hear from physicians, you can hear from school nurses, and you can hear from others on the value of why epinephrine in schools is so important and access to it. And that access could particularly come from having standing orders available for schools. So that one is in process right now. The other one that probably could be of interest to you is E2 Senate House Bill 1479, which has to do with restraint and isolation of students. And this comes up on occasion, particularly when we start talking about medications and whether or not those are actually being used in some way to restrain a student. And so that's something that we have to consider, as well as the physical restraint and then the use of isolation. And you certainly could have a lot of impact in those regards into having discussions with your folks who are involved perhaps in 504 plan development or other aspects of student care in why restraint and isolation can be detrimental to students. So next slide, please. Okay, this is the early learning. So this is another update. So this recording link would take you to the sessions that were early learning in K through 12. So you could listen to the public hearings here. And there's 3 that, well, actually 4, with 2 of these that are related to naloxone. But these recordings will take you again to public hearings about first of all, Senate Bill 5790 has to do with bleeding control equipment and training. So this is an example of Stop the Bleed is one course that this applies to. Yeah, it could apply to others, and it really is addressing whether or not schools should have or be required to have equipment available in the event of a mass for example, a mass shooting or other large traumatic event, whether or not schools have actually any access to things like tourniquets readily available, and who would be trained on the use of those things, and where are those things going to be stored. And so this bill is really addressing that, as to whether or not that should become, just like CPR and AED in naloxone training, whether there could potentially be a state mandate for bleeding control training. Another one of interest is Senate Bill 5804. There's also an accompanying or related bill, and that's House Bill 2029. These both address naloxone in high schools. So when you think about naloxone right now and the laws around that, currently the current law states that schools who have 2,000 or more students are required to have naloxone in their high school setting. And this bill would, or both of these would actually work to address language for schools with less than 2,000 students, and also addressing access to naloxone. So that one is recorded, it's starting at minute 45. And then there is another Senate Bill 5923, and this one addresses education of students related to fentanyl and opioids, and what is OSPI's role in ensuring that there is appropriate curriculum prepared, and how that curriculum is going to be incorporated into student education. So quite a bit on that in this recording. So again, I think the whole education public hearing probably take you about an hour to an hour and a half, but you can skip through it to these specific elements. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is an interesting House bill that is being considered right now, and it's House Bill 1788. This one has to do with raising age of consent for behavioral and reproductive health services. So when you think about that current status of things, you know that there is language in the law right now that allows for some care to be provided to students under the age of 17. So we've got some care for minors related to sexually transmitted diseases and getting consent for care. And then we've got some that is related to inpatient treatment in what students can consent for. And this really kind of came to the table, I think, largely because there was this desire. Oh, my battery's getting low. So there was a desire to make sure that there was actually coverage for similar ages. I don't know how far this is going to go, and so we're just going to keep an eye on it and see what occurs, because this is going to change things for a lot of folks if we do this. Okay, next slide, please, Sheila. Okay, and here's some additional bills of interest. Reducing the cost of inhalers and epinephrine auto-injectors. That's House Bill 1979. So you might hear more coming up about that. Senate House Bill 1960 has to do with increasing prototypical school staffing to better meet student needs. And House Bill 1937 has to do with student trafficking. Okay, so there's links there where you can connect right to those bills. Not every single bill has a video that goes along with it. It hasn't all have public hearings, but you can find more information about those bills on the legislative site. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, for those of you who have already downloaded this and are using it as a reference, this came out in November from the Washington Department of Health. It's the aerosol generating procedures guidelines. And there was a minor revision to this that occurred in December. So make sure that you download the current one. We just loaded it into our Google Drive, so you have access to it there, but you also have some links here to it on the slide. If you bookmarked the link on the Washington DOH site, it will take you to the current version of this now. Okay, next slide, please. Quick update from Washington DOH from the immunizations program. Catherine Graff wanted to share a couple of things. First of all, just so you know, the charts are already available for next school year. So if you go onto the Washington State DOH school immunization site, you can now find already the 24-25 school charts and the 24-25 IVERS manual. So that's your individual vaccine requirement summary document, which we encourage everyone to use because it's very detailed and will have all the information you need around immunizations. The other thing she wanted to point out is there was just kind of the only really change that was occurring had to do with the Tdap ages. And of course, with the age change a year or so ago, there's kind of this roll up of getting everybody into kind of the correct age range for their immunizations. And so just kind of rolling that along as getting people, making sure that kids have their right Tdap doses. And there's charts of those available when you click in the child and school and childcare immunization webpage, and you go into the current IVERS, you're going to find the tables that outline those things for you. But overall, there weren't any changes to childcare charts. So those of you who have youngest kids, if you're ever referring to the childcare charts, those didn't change. The certificate of immunization status is not changing for next year, and the certificate of exemption form is not changing for this year, coming year. Next slide, please. Next slide, Sheila.
I'm thinking that's the end. It doesn't want to, oh, there it is. It wasn't working, sorry.
Okay, so one of the things that Catherine wanted to point out was the COE. It seems like there might have been some confusion across the state around the when the school module started, that perhaps the certificate of exemptions were no longer needed in hard copy form, but they are still required. And so this is really just a reminder, if you have any kids who have an exemption, then you should have a certificate of exemption in a hard copy on file for them in their record. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so good news is, as just we've talked about naloxone distribution and the Washington Department of Health program. I thank you all who filled out the survey and let me know that you had an interest in getting some free naloxone kits for your high schools. So just as a quick review, this program is just being launched, and it is it's the Department of Health's work towards helping high schools meet the requirement of the law that says that every school that has 2,000 or more kids as of the law right now, that has 2,000 or more kids, needs to have naloxone readily available. And so they're providing some naloxone free of charge. And this naloxone is going to be available to any public high school, and that's with kids grades 9 through 12. Or any high school based program. So some of you completed that quick survey there. If you haven't had a chance to do it, but you would like to get some of this free naloxone, it's still sitting out there, and you're welcome to go in and fill it out. We have received the doses from the Department of Health, so we have those on available, and we'll be putting together just a little distribution plan to get those out to the school districts who are interested in having those. So this is not going to take the place of our other distribution process that we have. So we've still got doses available for middle schools or elementary schools or tribal schools or other schools that don't fall into that high school criteria for the Department of Health program. We still have naloxone available to distribute to any other schools as well. Next slide, please, Sheila. Okay, Department of Health again would like us to just remind people about this Teen Health Hub. And for those of you who have web pages and are putting information out to your parents or your students, this might be a link that you might want to add to that page if you haven't had a chance to do that. And this was a page that was actually put together with help from teens as well as Department of Health staff. And we're hoping that this will be a good mechanism to share information with teens in the state. There's also some posters and social media posts that you could use as tools to promote this to applicable students. Okay, next slide, please, Sheila. Okay, quick reminder about the OSPI District Assessment of Health Services. So this is going to be coming out for this particular 2024 school year. I thank all of you who work so diligently on this because the information that we get is really useful for us as an ESD to look at things like staffing and the types of health conditions and the volume of health conditions and the volumes of medications and treatments across our region, as well as at individual school districts. But it also helps at the state level for OSPI to understand how we're staffed and what are the needs of the students in our state. And it also helps NASCENT. So some of this information from our district assessments is scrubbed and shared with the National Association of School Nurses and goes into their data collection process as well. We did make some minor revisions to the tool this year. Every year we go through it and kind of look to see if there's any data point that we might be missing or if there's something that needs to be clarified on there. And so there were some minor revisions and corrections made to this year's document. The due date for them this year is going to be Friday, March 29th. So hopefully that will give you plenty of time to work on that. If you haven't done it before or you have questions about it, we will be sending out the instructions on how to do it along with the form. So those will come to you in advance. But then on January 30th, 31st, and February 1st, I'll be online to go through a overview of this and to talk about, you know, the different sections and some of the common questions that people have or how to fill it out correctly. So there'll be
Kathy?
yes.
Each of those 3 sessions, is it going to be the same information given at each one, or are they all going to be different?
It would be the same. It's just
Okay.
this is just an opportunity to see when people are available. Yeah, you would only have to do one. It'd be all the same.
Okay, I was just checking because I'm in DC for 2 of those days.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, and we could do, and you know what? If these don't work for you guys in Moses Lake, we could just set up a separate one for you. If that works better.
I'll email you.
Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked about the changes to the School Nurse Corps page. Your feedback, we really appreciate getting feedback about this. You know, if you find that you'd like to see things added, certainly share with us because we're happy to add things to this page. We are trying to keep more, like I said earlier, on the Google Drive because it's easier for us to update, particularly documents. You know, when we're loading a lot of documents into something, it's easier to do it there than it is on our page. So next slide, please, Sheila. All right, so you're going to get that new link to the Google Drive, and this is kind of gives you a view of what it should look like when you open it up with the first file or folder being COVID, and then everything appears to you in alphabetical order. So what we'd like to do is, again, get your feedback about some of this. I'm actually going to have Sheila stop sharing here for a minute and open the Google Drive up. So Sheila, could you, there you go. And Sheila, if you just want to share the actual Drive page.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding it. Here, I think here it is now. Okay. Got too many pages open. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so here's a kind of a long list of your folders that you've got here. And what we're trying really hard to do, for example, is not make like 1 million folders because while it does kind of help organize the information, it also can make everything really, really lengthy. So we're cleaning up and moving. We do tend to move things around, but try to keep things in an organized way for where it's easy for you to find things. So just a quick rundown of the different content in here. One of the things I wanted to point out for like, in particular is meetings. So if you're looking for meetings, this would be a place where you could go to meetings by date. You could find the PowerPoint slides and you would find the recordings for those meetings. And that's the school nurse meetings. So just pointing that out, the newsletters are going to be the archives of all the newsletters. The current one for January is in process right now, so probably will be coming out to you this week. And so that's something you can look for. And any archive versions are going to be in the newsletter file. The orientation manual contains all of our files related to school nursing orientation. And so that's a folder where if you weren't familiar with or you wanted to find some different information covered, then all of our presentations are in there from 2023 school year, as well as all the binder handouts. So when you click into the binder handouts for orientation, again, you can find where things are quite organized by topic, and you'd be able to click into any of these and find a wide range of resources. So I just wanted to show this to you as one mechanism to get to information. It isn't all related to orientation, but that is one of the places that you can find it. I'm going to skip right now down to practice manuals. The practice manuals used to be all posted on our webpage, and now they're posted in here. And again, the reason for that is because it's way easier for us to do revisions to these things as they change. So these are largely your OSPI manuals or your Washington Department of Health manuals or your I would say those are probably the majority things. I see your dietary accommodations are in here from USDA. So your manuals are in here. Again, they're posted alphabetically, and it'll tell you what year you're looking at and who created it. So these are practice manuals for school nurses. Okay, professional development. So I just wanted to show you, whoops. I'm going to have you back up just 1 second, Sheila, and go into training resource list. So this is a training resource list, and we provide this during the orientation process, but I just wanted to make sure that people knew that this was out here in case you were interested in it. And this is where we post links to a variety of training topics that people can access here electronically. So you can scroll down the page and see, you know, there's things related to different types of screenings and keep continuing down, diabetes, diabetes, seizures, just a wide range of trainings and how either you could apply to enroll in those different things or links to them. Some of these are recordings and are readily available anytime, and then others you can register for. So that is a resource list, and that is under professional development. So let's go back to access all school nurses. I want to make sure that you saw that you have a link here called toolkits. Okay, so toolkits is quite a large section, and this is where we tend to put things by diagnosis or at least a large categorical area where we could put a lot of information, but not create so many folders out on the main drive that it became too difficult to find things. So if you are looking for something and it's on a particular diagnosis, then I would encourage you, or particular program, this would be a place that I would encourage you to start to look, because you're going to find tools out here that will hopefully make your life easier. And I'll give you an example. So we've got our naloxone toolkit. So if you click into the naloxone toolkit, then you can see here's references related to, for example, if I need to report use of naloxone. So remember that if you do use naloxone in your schools, you are required to report it to your county health district. And here's your county health district reporting links. Okay, the other things that you would find in your naloxone toolkit would be things like the Washington state law associated with naloxone, Washington Department of Health documents related to naloxone. So these are all pretty new. As the program has expanded and naloxone is coming out from Department of Health specifically to ESDs to distribute to high schools, they also put out some different tools, and those are now posted in here under Washington Department of Health. So you'll find a family education materials, media talking points, other tools to help you as you expand your parent awareness of naloxone and how it's used in your schools. Okay. All right, and other things you're going to find in here are examples like of the WASDA policies and procedures and those types of things. Screenings is going to have some tools in it. Everything is full of tools. So it's full of either examples, and here's the different types of screenings that are most commonly done in the schools: vision, auditory, and dental. So if you click on vision, for example, we'll have some resources in there for different types of screenings that might be being done at school, whether it's a color blindness test or optotypes or instrument-based testing, what kind of tools are available for you. So each time you open up a folder, you're going to dig a little bit deeper into some resources that are available for you on that topic. Okay, and Skyward and Cumulative. So those of you who are on Skyward and Cumulative, either one, you're going to have additional access resources in there. Okay, and I think at this point, I'm gonna have you stop sharing and see if anyone has any questions about that change. Okay, I think the most difficult thing will probably be just, and it's not really going to be difficult. You guys are going to have it done in no time. And that's really just as soon as when Sheila sends you out a link to the new webpage, you're just going to want to go in and follow the directions that she sends about how to make sure that you are really getting into the right version, because eventually that old version is going to be deleted. There's not going to be a link to it anymore. So right now, for the last 2 or 3 months, I think we've been working kind of in duplicate files. And so this is going to be an opportunity for us now to launch this and say, here's the new area for you to go and get into this. If you click onto a link like next week and you find that it doesn't go anywhere and it's broken, it's because that link is the old one and it's no longer taking you to any folders. So we want to make sure you know how to get to the current ones and get those things bookmarked for yourself. Okay, any questions about that?
There was a question in the chat about sending out the link for people to view the testimony for Liz and Taylor.
Oh, it says you're having a hard time getting it to work.
Yeah.
Well, we could send it out. It's copied in the, if one of you guys wants to copy it right off of the, I would copy the whole, make sure you're copying the whole, recording session. And then from there, you should be able to scooch through. If you have any trouble getting on these, the other thing we could post out in the newsletter this week, or we could send you by email, is just the link to the legislative sessions. And you could, because you can get to all of these on the legislative site, and you can go into the hearings and listen to the recordings of the hearings on their recorded closed circuit television sessions that they have posted. So if you're having trouble with that, then we'll make sure that you get the right one. And thank you again to both Taylor and Liz for going on and testifying like that. Can kind of be nerve-wracking. I would encourage everybody to watch those though, because it really gives you an idea of what's it really like to go and testify, even via Zoom, about when you have something to say. And I think school nurses, one of the things that's so great about all of you guys is you always have something to say about these different things. And it's important to be heard and to have input into some of these decisions that somebody somewhere thinks might be a good idea, and they try to put it into law. And to have that other voice come in and say, well, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? And why is this important? Why is this important for students? Why is this important for schools to have some of these different things available? So they both are on there via Zoom, and so you can hear their recorded testimony for that epinephrine bill.
I just want to chime in and say, if you signed in for support of House Bill 1608, we really thank you. We had about like 430 people sign in for support and 0 for, I don't know what they call it, non-support. So that was great. So thank you if you signed on.
Absolutely. Yes, that's wonderful. I wonder if it would be helpful in the future if we planned out for one of our meetings, perhaps next year, so that we timed it so that we could make sure that you knew what these different options were for you as a nurse, how you could get involved in these things, to make sure you had your links. And Taylor's is our representative. Taylor's our snow representative for legislature. And so you've got somebody right here in our own region who would be able to provide this kind of information to you about, gosh, how could you get involved in these, and why is it important to give your feedback on these different bills? Are you muted? Can they hear you? Okay. Okay.
So
One thing I might mention, when we close this meeting, you won't have that access. So we are going to send out the information here shortly. So you can get it from that.
sorry, we had a little technical difficulty earlier, so I
And
had
you
to
still
stay
do.
muted. So hopefully that's better. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sheila put some links in the chat for you to look at some of those bills that Kathy was talking about earlier. Liz mentioned that she has had a chance to testify both in person and remotely. So lots of people in our area that have experience with trying to make a difference on the bigger picture level. So that would be a really interesting meeting. We'll have to work on getting that set up for us in the future. Okay. One thing that I did want to mention before we finish up our meeting today is that we do have the opportunity to work to get clock hours for the meetings. We do need you to register for the meetings in the email that we sent out last week. We encouraged you to sign up for all of the meetings in advance. Just when you do the first one, you might as well sign up for all of them, right? So part of that process includes filling out a survey with PD Enroller. And once your attendance is recorded in those meetings, PD Enroller will send you an email prompting you to fill out that survey. So if you are watching the recordings of the meetings and still want to get those clock hours for the meetings, again, you do have to enroll with PD Enroller. And then there is a form that I put on the reminder email from last week, and we will make a link for it in our meetings in the Google Drive. So for you to fill out to notify us that you attended the meeting after attended and watched the recording. And that will help us to mark your attendance for the meeting. So that way PD Enroller can send you a link for that survey so you can complete the process. And Sheila just reminded me to make sure that you enroll before the meeting starts. All right. If you have any other questions or concerns at all about, or not concerns, but if you have any questions about the content of our meeting today, please let us know and we can get you connected with the answers or get you connected with someone who can get you the answers. So that way we can make the process of your day smoother. One thing I did want to mention to you is that if you do have an idea or something that you want to learn more about, please email me with your suggestions. I'm always happy to learn more about the resources in the area and things that are of interest to you. So we can gear the content more towards your needs. So if you do have something that you are really wanting to hear about, please email me on that, okay? All right. Does anyone have any parting words? If not, we will go ahead and close the meeting for today. Thank you so much for your attendance. All right, thank you, everyone. Take good